Hey guys, how's it going? So we have another casters video today. We're going over, like I said, the more comprehensive rules a little bit. Basically, we're just going to go over all the rules maybe we didn't go over in the last video, as well as fill in the gaps of different rules and sets that we should probably go over. As you can see, this particular video has a significantly less amount of Oscar in it. So hopefully it goes just as well as before, but we'll find out. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. So the first thing we'll go over is a couple quick terms here, just to keep in mind as we go through it is, it defines things that you control as allied cards, and obviously things your enemy controls as enemy cards. So that's pretty much self-explanatory and obvious, but it's something to point out because it's something that all the cards go over. As far as the field goal goes, it works the same way that Force of Will does now. If you guys remember, Force of Will now changed it, so instead of having your field and your opponent's field, it's just one giant field, and the only difference is things that are in your control and the enemy's control. So that's exactly how casters work as well. Just the entire field is one field, so if a card is on the field, it's just on the field, and it's just the only difference of it is who controls it. So that's just something to keep in mind for different contexts and how different cards might work in the future. There are 7 different colors, and so this part's kind of annoying how they did this, but it is what it is. You're going to want to remember the names of the colors because there are specific cards that name out, instead of saying like red or yellow or whatever color there might be, it says the names of the colors and what effects it does against those, for example. And so the 7 different colors are Soulless, which is orange, Ignis, which is red, I think, Silva, which I'll have them right here, Silva, which is green, Terra, which is purple, Luna, which is yellow, Aqua, which is blue, and Ace, I think that's how you say it. It's reddish? I don't know. You guys should be able to tell right here. But so there's the 7 colors, so you want to remember those names, or at least a general idea of them, because like I said, there's a card that gains more attack against 2 of these different colors, and it gains more defense against 2 different other of those colors. So just good to know those different types of things. And there is, if there's an element icon that doesn't have any color inside of it, it's just referred to as colorless. It's just doesn't have a color. Another sort of tidbit is when playing the game, and I didn't think to ask this because Oscar and I were playing some for fun games earlier today. Your hand size, so you have the 7 cards at the beginning of the game, and I was getting a lot of cards and I was curious what the maximum hand size was, but it turns out there's no maximum hand size. So if you guys remember in Force of Will, you can have a maximum of 7 cards. Anything over that you have to discard into the graveyard. Here in casters, it's just free for all. You can have as many cards as you want in your hand, which can start to get quite a bit depending on the circumstances. Like with what was happening with me, I actually start getting a decent amount of cards, and it actually probably would have helped me if I had the ability to discard said cards, but fortunately that's not the case. And speaking of the cards, when constructing your deck, this is something we also forgot to mention in the last video, is each of your decks is going to be 50 cards. It's like Pokemon, where you don't have anything more, you don't have anything less. It's a flat 50 cards, no matter what. So you can construct it however you might. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. I kind of like those sort of set things because it puts everyone on an even playing field in a way, but it also restricts what you can and can't do, which kind of sucks, but you know, give and take. You can, like most games, you can have 4 of each type of card inside of your deck. It gets a little bit confusing because with casters, it's the same thing. You can have 4 of each caster. But level 1 and level 2 casters have the exact same name, but it ignores that. So you can have 4 of a level 1 Billy, for example, and 4 of a level 2 Billy, so an 8 total. Even though it has the exact same name, because it's level 1 and level 2, it's still considered separate. So that's something else to keep in mind. And there are different like card effects on the casters themselves. As far as Oscar and I can tell, like for example, there's a couple different casters actually that have the ability to either tap and banish or just straight up banish another card that has the same name. Now, as far as casters go, inside of your caster zone, unless the caster specifies, I'm saying caster a lot, unless it specifies otherwise, you can only have one of the exact same name inside your caster field at any given time. So, and since level 2 casters have the exact same name as level 1, that means you could never have a level 2 that interacts with a level 1 per se. So there are a couple level 2s that have abilities to banish the card of the same name. And the only way we could figure out that that would work is if once you upgrade your level 1 to a level 2 caster, which you do that simply by just placing a level 2 caster on top of a level 1 during the casting phase, like you would any other caster, you'd have the ability to banish the card that's under it into the graveyard to get that effect. Because there's no other physical way you could get that effect. And there's nothing in the CR that I can tell that really clarifies that. So as of right now, that's how it appears to work, that I would feel pretty comfortable saying. Going on with the casters, when you can also say you have in your hand, you played a caster or not or what have you, and you want to keep building up your ether pool, you can play cards face down in substitute of a caster. So if you don't have casters in hand, or for whatever reason you don't want to put it down or something like that, you can instead put any card you want at all face down into your caster zone, and it'll produce 1 void ether. And like I mentioned in the last video, all you need to play a card, like say it's a red attribute 3-cost card, you only need 1 caster to tap down for red, and then the rest can be any color you want, including void. So if you have 9 face down cards and 1 red card, you can play a 10-cost red card if you wanted to. It does come a bit tricky. Like I got pretty, I guess it'd be ether screwed, ether starved. I kept putting face down cards and I just couldn't pull caster. And when I finally pulled one, it was nice because I could play stuff, but because you have to tap the caster to produce ether in order to play a card, I could only play 1 card per turn, regardless of the cost. So it's just how you make it. Another interesting fact is, so level 2 casters can also be, they can be played on top of obviously their level 1 counterparts that have the exact same name. They can also be played on top of face down cards that you placed in the caster zone as well. So that's something interesting to keep in mind as well. And like I mentioned before, how the turn sequence works, it goes, you recover your cards, draw, play a caster. You have your main phase where you can play cards, both servants, barriers, and conjures. You can change position of servants that are in your field from recovered to reverse, and reverse is basically defense. And then you go to battle phase, do all your battling, and then it switches to end phase. And all of these different phases and the things inside of them have triggers similar to Force of Will. So when you enter the phase, it triggers a sequence and different things like that. And during all these sequences, as these triggers are happening, whenever trigger sequence happens, the turn player has priority in that. So that's something good to keep in mind. It just means that you get to do things first and you maintain priority. And priority sequences, they work, as far as I can tell, similar to Force of Will. I'll have the little thing that they have in the CR right here for you guys to look over if you're curious. But it just, it works in the sense of if there's any rules that to perform, those go first, and you repeat until there's no rules left to perform. You choose and play triggered automatic abilities. If there's multiple automatic abilities that are triggering, then whoever is in control of them chooses the order in which they trigger. The player with priority, which would be the turn player in most instances, performs any actions that they want to do. Like I said, it's very similar to Force of Will, or identical to Force of Will, so you can yeah. And backtracking a little bit, like I said, that during your main phase is when you can perform most of your actions, so playing servants and barriers, conjures, activate abilities, different things like that. And that act of switching a card from recover to reverse, which is defense, or vice versa, is called switching. So that's a term just to be aware of, because there might be cards and stuff that refer to switching and different things like that. And you can only switch your card once per turn. And if it's in a rested position, you cannot switch it for obvious reasons. So so you don't like tap it and then switch it into recover position or reverse position or anything like that. Once it's rested, it's rested. So abilities and effects in this game, once again, are very similar to Force of Will. So it has the continuous, activate, and automatic abilities in here. So activate abilities are things that you have to activate, such as tapping your card to perform something or paying a cost to activate the ability that's on the card. So there's automatic abilities. So these are abilities that trigger just on their own whenever something happens. So an example of this would be like whenever a card you attack hits the player, you get to draw a card or something like that. So it's an automatic trigger that it triggers off of you attacking the player or something like that. And then you have continuous abilities, like say you have a barrier card that gives all of your servants +2 +200 or something like that. That would be a continuous ability. So similar abilities and effects, and the things like the activate abilities go on the chase in an instant speed or quick cast speed. So something important here now to keep in mind is some of the keywords. So I'm going to go over some of the main keywords, or pretty much all the keywords that they have currently at least, and just briefly describe what they are. So first there's double corrupt. So this is a keyword on servants, obviously. So corrupting is when you attack the player directly and the attack is successful, you corrupt one of their orbs. You choose one of their orbs to corrupt. Once you choose an orb to corrupt, then that's when the person draws it into their hand. And once you've gotten rid of all their orbs and attack them, then you win. So double corrupt is you basically get to corrupt 2 orbs instead of 1. So that for obvious reasons, this is really awesome. It helps speed up the process quite a bit. And there's things like I forget the name of it, the pig, the 3-headed pig. It has double corrupt and the ability of whenever you corrupt an orb, your opponent discards a card. So if they have no cards in their hand, for example, and you hit them and double corrupt, they draw a card, and if the card doesn't have break for them to play right away, then they discard it, draw a card, and then have to discard it. So it's like a quadruple whammy, which is pretty awesome. There's break, which we had explained before. If it's in your orb zone and you pull it and it has break, that means you get to play it for free right then and there. If you decide not to play it and just put it in your hand, you cannot play it for free ever again for the rest of the game. There's slow start. So unlike things like Force of Will, where you have resonators that go in the field, and if they have swiftness, then they get to attack that same turn. Casters is the opposite. Every single servant you put in the field can attack that same turn, or they have to attack every single time they have the ability to, unless they have slow start. Slow start means you have to wait a turn before they can attack. So that's kind of a fun little twist on it. And one thing to keep in mind, before I forget, I should have been labeling this already, but things like double corrupt, break, and slow start are all continuous abilities, like we had talked about before with the different abilities. Quick cast now is another one that is also a continuous ability. So basically means that if it's a conjure or I guess a servant, basically anything with quick cast you can play at any point in time, both on your turn and your opponent's turn. You can play it in response to a trigger, a priority sequence being created, in response to your opponent playing something, and just different things like that. A quick cast is pretty self-explanatory, but it's pretty great to have. There's enter. Enter is an automatic ability, so it's an automatic ability that triggers as soon as said card enters the field. So when it enters the field, you just do whatever effect it says. Now this is something important to keep in mind. Like Oscar had a resonator on the field, and I had, or a servant on the field, and I had 2 servants on the field, and he played a second servant that said if his opponent controlled more servants than him, he got to destroy one or something along those lines. But he didn't realize, he forgot that because for that enter effect to trigger, the card has to be in the field. So since his card is on the field, he no longer has less resonators than me. We both have an equal amount of 2 and 2, so the effect didn't trigger. So it's just little tidbits like that to keep in mind. And the last one is last words. So it's a triggered ability of the card. So it triggers when it's put into the graveyard. When it goes into the graveyard from your field, whatever effect is on there just triggers. Pretty self-explanatory. And one thing I want to mention before I forget is we're not quite sure about the level 2 casters. So I remember back when we were first playing, I feel like it was said or mentioned that level 2 casters, when you put them on top of level 1 casters, now they produce 2 ether instead of 1. However, I haven't seen anything about that in the normal rules and the CR rules, so I'm going to assume as of right now they don't. They just gain extra abilities. But I'm just putting that disclaimer out there just because we haven't heard anything and we're not sure about it. But yeah, so that's basically all the main things to go over. We have our last video, and this one pretty much is everything you need to know to get started in the game. If there's things that you guys start coming up that you have questions about or think should be addressed, let us know in the comments below or inside of our Discord or any other we have a lot of different avenues of contacting us. And we'll probably later on, especially after the game comes out and there's a lot of different plays and rulings and different things like that, we'll create another video with more like exact things and exact rulings that people maybe have questions about, like that banishing I talked about, different things like that. So we'll look forward to that. Any other questions you have, and we'll obviously, if you have questions and you put it in the comments below, we'll try to answer them as we get to them. And yeah, if you guys want to support us, we'll go ahead and go to patreon.com/tcgscrubs. You can support us there for a lot of different benefits, both with Force of Will and casters. Like the $10 tier, you get to play a Lackey game with us. That'll be featured on the channel. We do Force of Will or casters, up to you guys. If you want to, like I mentioned, we have the Discord. You can join below. And obviously just subscribe here on the channel for more videos like this one. And we'll see you guys next time.